he wants with the Rock'em Sock'em wrench. Then battle him. You can pulverize your enemy. Take his best weapon and put him on your robot with the Rock'em Sock'em wrench.
Who's next? Red Rocker, that too.
It's quite strange when you look at that commercial. Many of you will probably go think, now they're no Rocky Socky robots, those are action figures. And you'd be completely right. The original toy line of Rock'em Sock'em robots that everybody knows was first manufactured by Mark's Toy Company back in the 1960s. However, the toy company would eventually go defunct in the 1980s, and eventually, the toy giant Mattel would acquire the licensing to remake the classic game, but it also decided to do a spin-off series of action figures that was based around the PlayStation game Rock'em Sock'em Robots Arena. Both of them launched in the year 2000. Now, before I actually get to the game itself, I want to point out a little bit of a fun fact here. The game was developed by Paradox Development and Midway Studios Los Angeles, and the game's engine itself was based around the highly controversial game Thrill Kill, which involved dismemberment and horrible other violent moves. And it's notable in gaming history by being the first game to ever get the adults-only rating, and that's pretty rare. Eventually, though, the game was completely scrapped, and the engine itself was ported over to what became a fairly kid-friendly game in Rock'em Sock'em Robots Arena. Now let's go on to the actual game. Once you boot up the game, you'll be met with an FMV that details a dystopian world where giant mech robots are prize-fighting each other. However, that storyline is actually pretty much null. Once you play the game, you'll see that the storyline does not matter whatsoever. However, it does serve as a nice little introduction to all the game's mechanics, like you'll lose parts, but you can claim those parts for yourself and the announcers that are actually the old Red Rocker and the old Blue Bomber. If you're expecting a fighter with a rich and robust world, look elsewhere. This game is pretty threadbare. It only has a career mode, an arena mode, and a practice mode, and a stakes mode, which is basically the arena mode, but I'll get around to that in a couple minutes. First, we're going to talk about what I consider to be arguably the second strongest point in the game, and that's the diversity of its fighters. It's got unique and distinctly different characters in the visual department. Their fighting styles may be somewhat similar, but for the most part they all have a different specialty. Like some of them are brawlers that get up close and fight, and then there's other characters that'll do range fighting because they're more of a skirmishing style. And those 9 interesting characters are the successor to a long and storied legacy, the Blue Bomber, a pure Jurassic Bonebreaker, Dino Avenger, General Warfare, the lean, mean fighting machine, the totally warped out freak from another planet, Headcase, the explosive radioactive fission-powered dynamo, Nuclear Waster, the master of knocking blocks off, the Red Rocker, Slamurai, the perfect warrior, the backbone of the National Police Force, Stakeout, and the one-man wrecking crew, Excavator. Beyond those 9 starter characters, there are 5 unlockable characters, but to do that, you have to beat career mode with 5 separate characters on their own. Now, the reason why I'm stressing some emphasis on that is because the career mode itself is 19 matches long. You have to win 95 matches to get all of the unlockable characters. That's quite a bit for this game, and it's even more whenever you're someone like me. I am notoriously bad at fighting games. I suck at them, flat out. If it's not Smash Bros., I'm awful. I've tried every single game in the genre. Okay, that's a bit of an exaggeration, but still, my point stands. I am trash at fighting games, so oh my god, this is a mess. Especially since I kind of find the game to be very slow and lumbering. It doesn't help whenever I'm versing a character who incentivizes the idea of fast gameplay. Like Headcase. Headcase destroyed me more times than I can count whenever I play this game. It just, for some reason, he always got to me. Same with Dino Avenger, both of them. Destroyed, gone, dead. With all that up, I do encourage that you end up getting those characters if you can, whether that be you going through the monotonous task of beating all this yourself, or if you just go find a simple save of everybody's completed data. Because if you do, you get to play as the 3 bosses that were just shown in them FMV sequences, and you also get to play as the original Red Rocker and the original Blue Bomber. I don't feel the need to talk about practice because it's like any other fighting game. Practice is just where you learn button combos and you can try out different things. Ultimately, there's nothing really to talk about. So we're going to talk about the last portion of the game here, and that's stakes mode. Now, honestly, if I actually got to use this in its heyday whenever the game was actually first released, I would have thought this is the coolest thing in the world. I still think this is a really, really cool idea, but there's just no real usage anymore. It's just not there anymore today. So to explain what stakes mode is, It's where you can take 2 memory cards, say your own and your friend who just came over for the weekend, and you pop them into your PlayStation, and you can bet parts that you guys have acquired throughout your various career modes against each other. So let's say I had the right arm of Nuclear Waster, and my friend wanted to bet the left arm from someone like, say, Slamurai, and we could verse each other for those parts, and the winner takes all. That's great. I think that's awesome. Now, of course, there's plenty of other games out there where you can take your memory card and save a character or something to that. Examples are all across the board. But this is different. This includes a wage system where you can bet and barter parts, and this can affect your career, because if you lose that part, now you're down that part for the rest of your career until you get a replacement or buy one. And your friend can walk out and have an easier career because let's say he got a really good weapon. But in the end, it just doesn't really matter because the game and its host system, the PlayStation, just aren't active anymore, and this is not a game that has a competitive scene whatsoever, so Stakes Mode just doesn't really have any importance to anybody who's willing to go out there and collect this game. And let's also talk about that. I personally, while I've had a lot of fond, nostalgic memories for this game, I don't really recommend anybody go hunt for this game unless they're really, really into collecting every fighter game or something relating to Mattel's toys. It just doesn't really have a lot of standout features, in my opinion. However, if you can get it for less than $5, I think there's a lot of merit to it. It's certainly a good, quick game to pick up, and the best part about the game that I have not talked about yet is the soundtrack. I think that if there was just an OST for this game, you should just go out and buy that on its own. Forget the game, get the OST. I'm going to flash through a couple of the songs here for probably only about 10-15 seconds per sample here, and it basically encaptures the whole entire area of that industrial trance kind of sound very well. Now, one thing I've noticed is while I was doing the research for this particular review, I found it very hard to dig up any kind of information on this game. I wouldn't say it's obscure or anything, but I guess it just wasn't popular enough that this stuff is readily available. Thankfully, though, after doing some digging and searching through the manual, I was able to learn that the music was composed by Deathline International. Unfortunately, this falls again down the line of obscurity, as I couldn't find much information on them either. The most that I was able to dig up was that they are an aggressive electronic industrial band from Oakland, California. And it's seemingly that they're still active, I think. I'm not entirely sure about that, but regardless, I'd like to thank them for this music. This has been a large part of my childhood and growing up. I loved this soundtrack, and I still do listen to it on occasion. It's great stuff. Beyond that, this whole entire experience is just kind of a one-off. I don't see Mattel coming back to do this stuff again. The Rock'em Sock'em Robots franchise has cemented itself in its roots. It's still going to always be that boxing game, and it's still popular and has a very strong place in history. It's been in movies, TV, everything, and it's still pretty popular to this very day. As a matter of fact, I went to a Dave & Buster's arcade recently that had gigantic versions of that, and you know what it reminded me of? This game. That same kind of thing. You have giant robots fighting each other, but I think it's always going to be red versus blue. It's always going to be the Red Rocker versus the Blue Bomber. We're not going to see any return of stuff like Dino Avenger, Nuclear Waste or any of the other stuff. It's just going to be those two. But I'm okay with that. You don't have to change a classic formula. It's been that way for years. Rock'em Sock'em Robots has always been a very popular children's game. However, I still enjoy what this brought us in the early 2000s. It was a unique spin on a classic franchise. While it's not anything special, and I don't think you should be rushing out to get it tomorrow or even in the next couple months, if you happen to go to a local game store or find it for very cheap, I think you should try it out too. This is Grookit, signing off.